With that, I'll call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Finance for the town of Simsbury for June 15th, 2021. And we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is not an agenda item, but maybe we could start by asking, is there any thought, maybe this is from Maria or Amy, of when these kind of meetings might become less virtual and more real?
We just talked about that about an hour ago.
Okay.
So you all will be getting an email. The governor's order is done at the end of June. So we're anticipating to go back into in-person meetings in July.
Okay. And will we have the capability to do Zoom remote hybrid meetings? If
we are going to have hybrid capabilities, they're testing.
Okay.
Right. 2 of the meetings, right, Maria?
All right, great, good. Okay. Look forward to that. You're muted, Linda.
Will we have to be masked in the live meetings, or can we? I think we're all vaccinated.
To be determined.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll look forward to that. All right. First up today is open space grant supplemental appropriation request regarding Meadowwood. Amy, you want to tee this up? Or Maria?
This one is Maria's baby. She will take it.
Okay.
Amy. So early last July, the Board of Selectmen had authorized us to submit a grant to the OSWA program, which is the Open Space and Watershed grant program. And it took OSWA a bit of time, about 11 months, to officially do a grant award. And the amount was so uncertain that we didn't budget for that anticipated revenue as part of the capital project. They did notify us just very recently that it's a firm $400,000 is the grant award. So in order to take in that revenue, we'll then need to appropriate it to the capital project. Bob had a nice way of characterizing it, and he said it's really just procedural and nature. But again, good news in the sense that with a revised funding model we were working with, this is right around what we thought we would get. So good news.
So how will this money be spent relative to the $2.5 million that was allocated from the town to purchase the property?
Yep, so it won't affect that piece. This was part of additional funds towards that overall $6 million picture in terms of the other state and federal grants that we were anticipating receiving towards the overall purchase price. So it'll just go into that pool of money at closing that we use for the $6 million purchase price.
Got a question?
Yeah, Lisa.
So I'm going to support this because this is certainly something that was discussed. I just had a question that's more technical as to why we didn't appropriate it. We have a place in the capital project for grants that we know about. I was just wondering why we didn't, and should we in the future? And
it was
come back.
Sure, just a lot of uncertainty. At one point we heard it might be as little as 400. At one point we heard it might be as much as over $1 million. There was just, again, a lot of uncertainty around this particular grant program. So it's sort of hard to kind of budget a number when that's a really big range, right? 400,000 to over $1 million. So we just thought it was best to wait until we had a better sense of the actual grant award, right? Because it's also speculative at that point. We didn't know if we would get it. But now that we have a firm number and we have an official letter saying it's been awarded, we thought it would be appropriate to bring the appropriation forward.
So what we need to do as a board is appropriate the money so that it can be spent because it's going to come in, right? Okay.
Can I just, it just isn't clear to me. So like Lisa, I'm of course going to support it, but so does this reduce the amount of money that it will cost the towns? And so you did plan on getting this money?
Right. We had anticipated that there would likely be some grant amount from this agency, but we were just unsure of what it would be.
Okay. So you must have guesstimated correctly, because then the town
Yeah, we did with the revised funding model. Yep.
Could you remind me, what was the agency?
It's DEEP, which is a state agency.
I think Art knows that one pretty well.
Yeah, I never thought of them as an agency. They're a department. That's what I was thrown off. Go ahead.
All right, any other questions or comments? So I'll be looking for a motion to move effective June 15th, 2021 to approve the supplemental appropriation request for the Meadowwood acquisition as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Perrell. I need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Lisa. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, the next item is the library boiler and HVAC repairs supplemental appropriation request. Who gets to do this one?
That's Maria's baby as well.
All right.
So at one point during the winter, we started to experience one of our two boilers at the library starting to leak. So Tom Roy and his team have spent the last few months just evaluating it and have determined that we will be able to repair it as opposed to a full replacement. And again, this is also an opportune time just because we're not really using the boiler at the moment since we're in the warmer months. And the estimate to do the repair for the leaking boiler is about $9,200. And then within the last month, we also started to experience some failures of our HVAC controllers at the library as well. And to do the repairs on the controllers, that would be some additional funds. Planning for a small amount of contingency. Tom thinks that he can do the work on both items that need repairs for about $25,000. And then in consultation with Amy, in terms of, since we know we'll have a good amount of year-end savings, should we potentially fund that through year-end savings or capital reserve? And Amy had a recommendation to do that through year-end savings.
So this work will be done and it will be part of the 2021 budget.
Correct.
Because there's room left over. All right. And we don't actually set up maintenance reserves or funds like that for these kinds of contingencies, or do we?
We do now because we do have the capital reserve. So you might recall we had the ice rink boiler fail a couple of winters ago.
Right.
It was about $10,000, and we were able to use, fortunately, the capital reserve at the time. That happened, I think, maybe around, I want to say, sometime mid ice rink season too. And we were able to get that fixed with funds in the capital reserve. But prior to that, we didn't have a fund for those emergency items. So it's good that we have it now.
And Maria,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I would imagine there's a line item in the budget for, contract services, annual just checkups, right?
For certain services, we do use outside vendors, like our fire extinguishers and some things of that nature.
I'm specifically asking about HVAC.
Oh, for HVAC, that's a great question. I'd have to ask Tom Rory and we could get that answer for you. I don't know if we're doing our own PM on that or if we're using an HVAC contractor for that, but I could definitely find out. But we're
as opposed to just being a reactionary thing. And then do we know what the remaining, when was the library rebuilt, and did we get new HVAC units with that? We did, right? When was that?
That's a great question. I know it was mid 2000s, I believe, was the big expansion and sort of renovation. And the HVAC controllers were actually anticipated to last about another 5 years in terms of useful life. And again, we believe we can repair as opposed to do a full replacement, of the controllers.
And that you hit on my last question, which was, what's the remaining useful life on the boilers?
On the boilers, yes. So the boilers definitely have a longer useful life. And that's, again, where Tom was doing his evaluation in terms of what it makes sense to repair this particular boiler or replace it. And it was just more economical, he felt, to move forward with replacement at this point. I'm sorry, with repairing.
Yep.
With repairing.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. I'm sorry, just a little anecdote. I feel like I might have jinxed us a little bit. I don't know if you recall, but when we were Amy and I were chatting with you all about how it would be really helpful to have a capital reserve, particularly for an emergency situation would pop up. And I actually used an example of, what if one of our library boilers went down in the middle of winter? That was the example I kept using. And then here we are with an emergency repair to our library boiler. So I told Amy, I said, oh goodness, I feel like I jinxed us.
So this
See?
funding would come from the reserve, the
From year-end savings,
capital-
right? Just
from
because
year-end savings, not from the capital reserve fund of
Right.
your story. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Just because of the timing of where we are in the fiscal year.
I had a couple questions. Obviously, I'm going to support this. It's not a big deal. It's actually a small number. But two things. One, we knew this was leaking in the winter, so I'm wondering why we didn't budget for it is the first question. And then I have a follow-up.
Sure. Again, Tom, did a pretty careful job. It wasn't a complete failure of the system, so we were able to keep hobbling, along with it. We definitely wanted to try and get through, obviously, the winter months without having to shut down the boiler. But again, Tom just did a really nice job over the last few months, really kind of, again, evaluating options with repair versus replacement. And ultimately, he concluded that the repair option was the best option. So again, it was just something that took a little bit of time to work through.
And then the second thing is more sort of a technical and maybe goes to the point of perhaps we should do a policy in August about supplemental appropriations and just sort of nail that down. But I actually don't think you need to come to us for this because you're doing it. Transfers between departments have to come to the Board of Finance, but as long as you don't exceed the overall departmental appropriation, you can do a transfer within the department upon the approval of the Board of Selectmen, as I understand it. So if you're using year-end savings, I think technically you don't have to come to us, but I'm happy to do that.
I guess I would view this, and Amy, if you feel differently, but just because it's a capital, it rises to the threshold of being more of a capital expense as opposed to operating.
So you're doing it as more of a transfer in the operating as opposed to a library. I mean, you could technically use it under equipment maintenance line item. So, I mean, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. We're going to approve it anyway, but just
Sure.
in the future, you're looking at 90,000 in savings in the library. It just seems like a simple transfer within the library department. Just to make your life easier in the future if something like this comes up. And the other thing we could do in the future, now that we don't have to tax for a contingency thing, we could appropriate capital reserve during the budget process at a non-tax dollars, just, the 50,000 that we didn't want to do when it was taxable. But since we have it now, we could appropriate it and then you wouldn't have to come to us, to Derek's point, for little things like this.
And is this really capital, or isn't maintenance part of operating expenses?
If you're not replacing the boiler, it's probably not capital. It's probably an operating expense. Yeah.
And we have an equipment maintenance line item under library administration that would be an appropriate transfer too. So, I mean, we're happy to approve it. We're here.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable either way, whatever Amy's most comfortable with. If we want to charge it as operating or charge it as capital, I'm comfortable either way.
So I guess kind of the way that I look at it is at year end, we don't go and spend our year end savings without telling you what we're doing. So to me, that falls into the same bucket. We're not just going to spend it on something that was outside the budget. Because I don't think that you would want to hear at year end that, hey, we just went and did what we wanted with the year end savings and this is what's left over and you guys can decide what to do with it. So I don't know. I just thought it was more appropriate to have it come before your board.
I have no objection to it there.
Yeah, really. We appreciate that. All right. We spent more time on this than I thought we would.
I'll move that we approve the supplemental appropriation for $25,000.
Moved by Linda.
Second.
Second by Kevin. You're not quite quick enough, Derek. Come on. All right. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? None. Approved. All right. Next item is the Economic Development Commission supplemental appropriation request. This request was tabled by the Board of Selectmen last night, so we will do the same and wait for them to advance it before it comes back to us. So that moves us on to the Spirit Council supplemental appropriation request. I see Cheryl is here. I suspect that has something to do with it, right? No? Yeah, there she is. You're on mute.
I
will not interrupt your deliberations unless you need me.
Okay. All right. Somebody going to present this or?
I'll do the overview.
Right.
So this is the request that was brought forth during the fiscal year 22 budget process. And the Board of Finance had recommended it be removed from the budget and we utilize year-end savings to fund this project. So we're bringing it forth now so that they can get started on their work. And it was approved last night by the Board of Selectmen. And so that's kind of where we're at.
All right, so we've pretty much gone over this in, out, over, up, down. So I need a motion to,
I haven't, hold on a second.
oh, I'm sorry. Okay, question.
I thought the original, they had come in and asked for like $5,000 original.
That was a different appropriation. That was a supplemental appropriation for fiscal year 21 that you already approved. And then
Right.
they had an additional request in the fiscal year 22 budget that was deferred until we were able to utilize year-end savings. And that's what this request is.
Yeah, this was in the 22 budget. We asked them to take it out and move it to the end of this year's budget out of savings, right?
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
And go ahead, Sharon.
So now we're formalizing what we asked and they agreed to do.
But that mid-cycle funding request that you're referring to, Derek, that's correct. But the money for the data committee was never actually dispersed anyway. So the only money that was dispersed out of that was the $2,000 for our public engagement consultant. So none of that actually had happened. But
Okay.
thank you for asking. Yes.
Thank you for clarification.
Okay, I need a motion for the 22. Oh, I'm sorry, Linda, question?
That's all right. I'll move that we support the supplemental appropriation request, but I do want to ask a couple questions. So once we get to discussion.
Okay, after it's moved and seconded, we can have a discussion. Derek, did you want to second this or not?
I'd be happy to, Rob. I second the motion.
Thank you very much. All right, further discussion, Linda?
One's a question for Amy. So we're not quite at the end of the year. And so I know the last time you told us we had like something like $700,000 surplus. So there's plenty of room for this, but I'm just wondering about process. Will we be again next month looking at additional end of year spending that you want to do, or in which case shouldn't we be doing it all at once? Or I'm just
so I wish it was next month, but I don't move that
or
fast.
well, yeah, a couple months from now.
So by the time we get to year end closeouts and transfers for year end savings, it'll probably be around September.
Yeah, so that's too much of a delay for what these guys want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my other question is for Cheryl. Can you tell us a little bit, just for our curiosity's sake, what data is it that you want to collect and what will it enable you to do?
Absolutely. I know we went over this a little bit before, but I'm happy to specify.
Sorry,
We
forgot.
have both, we have two data analysis providers that we have been talking to. One does health equity solutions and one is Data Haven. Data Haven, you might be familiar with. They do a lot of data collection within the state and they do different regional collections. So what we're asking for is a more specific quantitative and qualitative collection with reference to Simsbury. We are a small data set, so it's hard to extrapolate data for us out of those much larger data sets. So that takes some time and effort for that. And we are also looking to get a qualitative baseline from residents about how they feel about, different things that are going on in town, how they feel about diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, how they might have been affected by this. Because, we understand that not everybody comes from the same place. And we think it is worthwhile in our effort to make us a more welcoming community to find out what those issues are.
So it's sort of a public opinion, what people think about these issues?
Part of it is,
As
yes.
opposed to, what's the demographic makeup or something that's.
That type of data is available to us from some sources, and town departments have been very cooperative and generous in their sharing data with us. But those are just employment numbers, basically based on demographics, and we need to go a little beyond that to do what we want to do. We've also looked into sharing some of our data with the Board of Education because they have a similar effort going on within the school system. So we are going to work with them on data that they have that is depersonalized, that can be shared with us, and we will share with them what we find out about the general community sentiments.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I understand the polling part, asking people questions in their positions, but the data is still too amorphous for me. I couldn't explain to someone else what kind of data we're voting on and what data, what is it? What are we getting that we don't have that we need? I don't understand that.
Some of it, well, you'll recall the Board of Selectmen passed a resolution declaring racism a public health crisis. And within that resolution, there are 5 subject areas that we have been tasked to work on. Criminal justice, health equities, education, housing, and food security. So within those 5 areas, we are going to collect data with how each of those things affects our residents. Obviously, different residents are affected by different parts of that equation. Some people are more affected by housing needs, some with food security, some with criminal justice, and that's what we're going to find out.
By surveying the people. Okay.
Yeah.
And so just, I want to just throw something out there in terms of raising money. That is in no way part of collecting of the data, such that you send out a survey and maybe ask at the bottom if you'd consider making a donation.
No, we can't do, we're a town committee, so unless we formulate ourselves as, either a 501c3 or a separate organization, we're not going to solicit funds like that. We are not a special project, we're not so we're a regular town committee. However, that being said, we are exploring grant opportunities wherever they come our way. We have worked on several so far, some with the library, some with relation to the Performing Arts Center, we are everywhere it comes up, we try. So that is one of our goals, is to get some outside grant funding. The Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, there is around health equities, there are some opportunities that might be available to us, but like I said, we are open to any of that. And we do, like I said, we have participated in some applications already.
And then where is the data stored, and is it protected?
Well, that will be, that is exactly why we are hiring professionals to do this. Both Data Haven and Health Equity Solutions have secured systems where, like I said, this is their job. That's what they do statewide. So that is in place through their companies. So that will be part of our contract, which Maria is reviewing.
No, thanks for that background, Cheryl. It's all really important and informative. So thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Yeah, I'm going to be supporting this, and I appreciate all the work you're doing and the town for bringing this forward. My question is more sort of about supplemental appropriations. I know a best practice that ICMA recommends is not to do too many during a year, or else the rating agencies begin to question the budgeting practices, and they recommend you do it in prescribed times throughout the year. So I'll probably do a draft of a supplemental appropriation policy for us to examine in August when we do policy reviews, just so that we can tighten that up a little bit and not run into any risks going forward, and see if we can.
I think that would be helpful for committees like ours too, so that, we have some idea, when to ask, when it's appropriate, that would be great.
That makes, most people do it at close of year, end of year transfers. They do a mid-year thing, and then if an emergency situation comes up, and our charter does permit it more often than that. So this is not an inappropriate by any means request, but the question is, is there a policy that can get us a little bit smoother? And to your point, Cheryl, to give you some notice as to when might be the opportune time to make those requests. And if we could do them all at once as a package instead of piecemeal, that would just probably make everyone's lives easier. So we can look into that. But I certainly appreciate your situation.
Thank you.
All right, we've, any other discussion that's been moved and seconded? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No, passes. Thank you, Cheryl. Appreciate
Thank
you being
you.
here.
Thank you all for your service.
All right, moving on, the request to establish a special revenue fund as it relates to the ARP funds.
Yep. So at the last Board of Finance meeting, I reported out in my finance director's report that we would be receiving some ARP funds. And initially it was reported about 2.5 million. But now that we have our county allocations, that number has increased to 7.5 million. Since it's such a large dollar value and we can actually incur the expenditures through December 2024, we want to be able to put that money aside into its own fund so that we can easily track the money coming in and the money specifically related to the ARP funds going out over multiple years. In addition, since we don't have a list of projects that this money is going to be used for, the Board of Selectmen just voted to establish a work group last night to work through some options. So since we don't have like the 1 year of this money is going to be spent in 1 year, this is how much is going to be spent in this year versus this year versus this year. This allows us to just keep the fund rolling and keep everything organized and transparent.
Amy,
So it's a, go ahead.
Is this include where we're going to put the library and Board of Education funds, or are they going somewhere else?
The Board of Education funds go into their own grant fund on the Board of Ed side, and then the library funds would go in here, yes.
Thank you.
So this makes perfect sense to me that you'd keep it segregated to make it easier to track. So I'll move to do that. I just want to make one comment, and that is that there's a, just for the public's education, that there's a lengthy list of what that funding can be used for that goes beyond what's written here to include projects in the community for businesses and nonprofits that have been severely impacted by COVID, et cetera, et cetera. So it isn't just for the town, although obviously I would hope the town would, fill its own gaps first, because we certainly had them, things like the summer camp programs that lost money last year. But there will be money in addition to that for other organizations. So
I
I
need
moved it.
thank
We need
you.
a
So we
second.
have a motion, and then we need a second.
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any further discussion on this? I guess I'd just add that, and I know it's implicit in this, but we will get regular reporting on the amounts that are spent and tracked against this as well.
It'll be included in your quarterly reports, yep.
Right.
I'll
Okay.
just make one humorous observation, Amy, about a typo here, because in number 5 at the end of that first paragraph, it says funding objections include, I think you meant objectives.
Yep, probably did.
All right. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No one's opposed. All right, great. Good. All right, next up is the proposed amended defined contribution plan investment policy.
So this was reviewed at your last meeting as well, and there was one item under assignment of responsibilities, line item number 3, that we were waiting for clarification from the town attorney on, related to clarification around the plan administrator, Board of Finance versus day-to-day responsibilities. So the town attorney was able to clarify, so we added it back for the completeness and finalization of the policy.
Okay, and Lisa, you did a fair amount of work on this. You're happy with where we are?
I
Okay.
am.
All right.
Bob reached out to me and I
Okay.
Yep. There was no actually disagreement on the substance.
No, it was just trying to be crystal clear about the different assigned abilities. All right. So we have spent a fair amount of time on this, so I would be looking for a motion to adopt this policy.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Trying to set a world record tonight.
Yay.
Approval of minutes. I think our minutes are getting pretty tight, and I like them. And so I want to give a shout out and say that we appreciate the efforts. So,
It's a lot of work.
I agree. I'll move adoption.
all right, and a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So moved. We have a couple of communications, one from the auditors about SAS 114. We have an hour and a half presentation on that.
So this is just the SAS 114. It's the annual letter that they provide the Board of Governance before they start the audit, and it just it spells out the responsibilities of the auditors, the responsibilities of management, and then timing of the audit.
Amy, it does say they're going to be reaching out to meet with us before they begin. Are we going to set that up in July or August?
I'll have to check on that. Bloom Shapiro never did that. They always did the letter. I think you guys have the option if you want under CLA, but I can ask them, or if you want them to come out.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. It's a new auditor. It'd be good to.
Oh, we didn't change managers, did we?
No, we still have all the same staff, so all the same.
Same staff. They just changed the letterhead.
Right. They just got bought out by CLA. Yeah.
All right, still be glad to do that. All right. And then the last thing is the building permit department report. Continued activity appears to be continuing to be robust, including a couple of projects at the Pomeroy residence. Just FYI.
We check in
All right.
those.
Yeah. All right. So great meeting. I'm done. Somebody want to move adjournment?